In the next few moments, I'm going to help you crush the biggest fears you have as a student. We all have fears, especially as students, whether you're a pre-PT trying to get into physical therapy school or you're a student trying to get into your dream career, whatever that might be. We all have fears, and these specific fears that I'm gonna share with you today might be stealing your dream away from you, because the longer you let them kind of stay there, what happens with fears? We either run away from the things that we should be going towards, or we freeze because we're so stressed out, we're so nervous, we're so scared of the worst case scenario. So I wanna talk about fears today, fears, and by the end of this training, my hope is that you will learn how to absolutely crush every single fear that's holding you back from your dream of becoming a physical therapist. So let's get to work. So before I share with you what I'm gonna talk about, my name is Joseph Gugi. I am a physical therapist. I am one of the co-founders of Pre-PT Grind, where for years we have specialized in helping students get into physical therapy school without wasting time or money, as well as helping them graduate from PT school debt-free. So if you need one of those two things, you're on the right page, and please be sure to binge on all of our content. But in this particular training, let's talk about fears, because they might be drowning your dream of becoming a physical therapist. So I'm gonna break this up into two sections. Section one is actually going to be me talking about some of the biggest fears that the students that we've worked with have had. And I want you to just ask yourself, do I have fears like this? Or do I recognize one of the fears that Joseph is gonna say as one that maybe might be holding me back? And then the second half, I'm actually going to show you how to deal with those fears so that they don't control you anymore. Okay, I want you to be in the driver's seat of your entire journey as a student so that you can do the stuff that you need to do to get into PT school and get through PT school and become a physical therapist, because that's the dream. So I'm gonna list a few different fears that I have seen with a lot of the students that we've worked with over the years, and let me know if you can relate with them, and also let me know in the chat section below if you can relate with any of these. And then of course, I'll teach you how to navigate through them, because if you can do this, then you'll be able to do the things that will help you get into your dream career. And that's what we care about. We want you to become a physical therapist because that's what you want. So let's talk about some of the biggest fears. So I'm gonna list a few, and just let me know in the comments below if you recognize any of these or you identify with any of these. And if you're brave enough, just tell us which one sounds like you. So the first fear that I hear a lot is, I'm scared to get rejected, right? So I'm afraid of rejection. Does that sound like you? Basically, I'm afraid that I'm going to put in all this work towards becoming a physical therapist and things might not work out. And it's a big fear. It's a big fear, and it can lead us to be paralyzed in a way, right? Because we're so consumed with the fear that at the end of the road of all of our hard work, things will not work out. And it leads us to compare ourselves to other people. It leads us to feel like we're never good enough. It leads us to be super anxious every time we take a class. Think of how it's affected you. Like, how has the fear of rejection affected you? Because that's easily one of the most common ones that we see with students. And like I said, at the very end of this, I'm gonna show you how to deal with those fears. But maybe your fear is the fear of rejection. Maybe it's being afraid to let your parents down. So think about the person in your life that you believe has helped you the most, or the person that you don't want to disappoint. And for many people, it's their parents, right? So they're like, I'm afraid that if I don't get into physical therapy school, I will let my parents down. So maybe that's one of your fears. Another fear is, I'm scared that there's a lot of people that will not see me as successful if I don't get into physical therapy school. So I'm scared of how it will look. I'm scared of what other people will think, which is another thing that, paralyzes a lot of students. What will other people think if I don't get into PT school? Well, what will other people think when my classmates that I went through school with get accepted and I don't? So it's a whole thing, and we start psyching ourselves out even before it happens. I think that's the craziest part, is that our brains are so powerful that they start to create these narratives way before the thing actually happens, yet we act as if it's real. Another one is, I'm actually afraid that everyone else is more qualified than me. And that's when I even heard today, right? It's like, I'm just scared that every student that I see, and this is where I see students go on Reddit threads and they're looking at all the other people talking about, I had a 4.0, I had a 3.95, and they might have a 3.0, they might have a 2.9, they might have a 2.8, and it starts to get you to believe, I'm not going to be qualified. I'm never going to be qualified. I can retake as many classes as I want. I can retake the GRE. I can work hard at this, work hard at that, but I'm never going to be qualified enough to be able to stand out to these schools because everyone else is just better. And we genuinely believe that. And if we believe that, then we'll basically play scared, right? And that's a big fear. So just let's talk about them so that we're not letting them consume us, because for many of you, these fears are taking over your entire journey. And the crazy part with fear is that the more I let it kind of sit in, the more it turns into anxiety, right? And anxiety is basically my fear of the worst case scenario, right? So I'm basically focusing on the worst possible outcome. And what happens is when it gets to the extreme, I become paralyzed. And I stop doing the activities that would have helped me get into PT school, or I stop doing the activities that would have helped me get a better grade in retaking a class. I stop doing the activities that would have helped me pick the right schools, do better on the GRE, do the things that would have actually gotten me into a program. So what happens is the more I let my fears take over, the more paralyzed I am, the less I do the things that are supposed to help me get into PT school. And then what happens is the thing I'm afraid of happening ends up happening. But it's not because you couldn't get into PT school, it's because your fear paralyzed you and you stopped doing the things that could get you into PT school. Does that make sense? And so I want you to understand the difference, because this is powerful, like powerful. And for those of you that are consumed by certain fears, I want you to understand you are not the first. You are not the first to feel any of those. And I know there's a massive list of fears that you could be experiencing. And in the next few moments, I'm gonna show you how to deal with them, but that's a big one, right? So before I show you how to deal with your fears, let's first of all ask ourselves a question. Take a piece of paper and write down every single fear or every single thing that you are anxious about. Look at it, be aware of it. I think sometimes we feel those things, but we're not aware of what it is, right? So make a list of those things and then write them down and then ask yourself, is my fear of this thing, or is this particular fear serving me, or is it paralyzing me? Because if it's paralyzing you, then something has to change. Not something might need to change. No, something has to change if you want to have a shot at getting into PT school, or at least getting into your dream career. Otherwise, you will get in your own way and it'll basically lead you down the path of either rejection or basically quitting, which is what typically happens when we don't know how to figure this out. Now, the reason why I said, is it serving you or is it paralyzing you, is because fears can actually serve you, believe it or not. So for example, let's say I have been slacking off and I'm like, oh my goodness, I'm afraid that I'm not gonna be ready to apply. It might be a helpful fear to get you to lock back in and say, cool, I need to focus again, I need to lock in. That's a healthy fear, right? But an unhealthy fear is when I'm so consumed with something going wrong that it literally stops me from doing the stuff that I need to do. And that's where it becomes dangerous. And a lot of that is usually made up. All the fears that you have are made up in your head. Like, you create a storyline. So start telling yourself a different story. And this is now when we start to change things, so that now we can start basically looking at our fears and saying, how do I deal with this? How do I break this pattern so that this fear doesn't hold me anymore? Okay, so here's how you do that. If your fears are not serving you, we need to start challenging those fears. You challenge your fears by first asking, why do I personally believe that each fear is true? That's the first question you want to ask yourself. Is it true? And why do I believe it's true? The second question is, do I have any evidence that this fear is true? And then the third question is, have other students been able to tackle this fear and prove it to be untrue? Have other students been in my exact position, whether it's with my grades, whether it's with my age, whether it's with my standardized exams, so GRE, whether it's with the amount of times I've been rejected or whatnot, whatever your big fears are, with feeling like they were gonna disappoint their family. And I could tell you story after story after story of literally every single one of the fears that I laid out before, but also many more but connecting them to students that have actually been in that same position, but made a decision. They were like, I can either give into that fear and quit, or I can figure out how to challenge my fears. And asking those questions of, why do I believe this fear is true? And do I have any proof or evidence that it is true? And here's a question that's always interesting is, if you look at each of your fear and ask yourself, what if the opposite of this fear was true? What if in my fear of being scared of letting my parents down, what if I couldn't let my parents down? What if all that's happening is that they just might not understand what's going on right now, but it's only because they don't understand this particular journey. They've never been physical therapists, right? And so, but maybe 3 years from now, they'll be very proud of me because all they want is for me to accomplish something or get into my dream career or start working or whatever their dream is. So what if the truth is that you can't disappoint them, even if you get rejected, even if things go wrong? What if instead of being consumed by the fear that you won't get accepted into PT school, ask yourself, what if this is the year that I do get accepted? How would I act? If I had a time machine and I could just go from where I am right now to basically my first acceptance letter and know that it's guaranteed, how would I act? How would I show up? What would my energy look like? What would my focus look like? If I'm now still needing to retake a class or two in order to make that happen, how would I show up to that class? How locked in would I be? Just ask yourself those questions and then say to yourself, am I willing to act as if the best case scenario is true? Because when you start acting like the best case scenario is true, you start doing the things that will help you make it happen. Does that make sense? And the last part is this too. The last part is, if I am focusing on the best case scenario, but I'm still stuck, the good news is that there's help. Like, there are people that have done this multiple times that can help you navigate through that. And we are one of them, right? And we've literally worked with tons and tons of students over the years. And I can tell you, like, you are in good company. You are in great company, actually. And if you feel stuck and you're like, hey, I want help, we got you. I'll give you a link to go to here in a few moments. But I want you to start challenging your fears. Do not let your fears consume you, because they will literally steal your career from you. And it's unfair to you, it's unfair to the people that you're gonna serve, and that's why this particular training is so important. Now, if after listening to this, you're like, whoa, okay, I'm starting to believe in myself a little bit more, I'm starting to realize how important it is to deal with my biggest fears, but I want more help along my journey, then here's what I want you to do. I want you to go to www.acceptedstrategy.com. www.acceptedstrategy.com. Now, this is specifically for students who are listening to this right now, who are pre-physical therapy students. You're trying to get into PT school. You feel stuck. You have certain fears that have basically held you back from feeling like a strong applicant. And you want someone to basically say, you know what? Here is the step-by-step blueprint of how you can get into a program. Here's what other students like you have done differently in order to get into a program. And let's just hold you by the hand and make sure that it actually happens. And so if you want that level of guidance, go to www.acceptedstrategy.com, because you're not the first, you're also not the last. And that's a good thing. It means that whatever you're going through, it's not unique to you, meaning that if it's not unique to you, someone else has figured it out. And if they have figured it out, why not learn what they did differently so that you can do it as well, and so that you can get the same result they did, which is not only getting into PT school, but getting into their dream career. So that is it. I hope that was helpful. I hope that was eye-opening. Let me know what some of your takeaways were in the comments below, of course. If you're new to this platform, please be sure to binge on not just this page, but also all of our other platforms. We're basically on every social media platform under the name Pre-PT Grind. And of course, be sure to subscribe, and we'll see you on the next training. Have a good one. Bye.